Okay, and we are now live. I'm going to give it a few moments for the attendees to trickle in with their invite links. Just a few minutes for everyone to come on in.
You don't have to. Well, no, I was going to say with the chief.
And again, everyone who is joining us, thank you for joining tonight's Citizens Academy webinar. My name is Laura Gramis. I am the Public Information Officer for Lehigh County. I am the weekly host of these webinar sessions. I apologize ahead of time for my lack of camera. Hopefully in the future, maybe I'll be able to acquire one, but for now, just gotta sell it for my voice. Tonight's webinar session will be focusing on the row officers of Lehigh County. We have the Sheriff's Office, we have Sheriff Hanna, and Chief David Faust with us. And we also have the Coroner's Office. We have Coroner Eric Minnich. We are also expecting Controller Mark Pinsley to join us. He is having some technical difficulties. We're hoping to hear from him soon. Once he does join, we will go do a brief overview of his office. We're going to begin the webinar just because we don't want to delay any further on our time schedule. So just a quick rundown of how the webinar is going to work. If you joined us before, it's the same as always, but if you're new, I would like to remind everyone that today's presentation will focus on the history and role of the row offices in Lehigh County. Like I said, we are featuring the Sheriff's Office, the Coroner's Office, and the Controller's Office. We ask that you refrain from all questions and comments until after a panelist is finished presenting, or if there's a break during the presentation. If there's any prompt for questions or answers, we'll open the floor. This is a disclaimer that we are only accepting questions related to tonight's presentation. Any off-topic or disruptive questions will be withheld and we'll have to move on to the next question. If there's any aggressions or disruptive remarks, we will result in an automatic dismissal from the webinar. If you would like to ask a question and you're joining us by computer, please use the raise your hand option to be recognized. If you're joining us using a mobile app, you will also click raise your hand as well. However, if you're joining us by telephone tonight, you'll need to press *9 on your phone to request to speak. Once you are requesting to ask a question, the moderator, which is myself, will unmute you and let you know you have the floor. After you ask your question, we'll give the floor back to the panelist and then we'll go from there. So without further delay, I won't hold you guys much longer. I will pass the floor over to the Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Hanna, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Laura. Good evening, everyone, citizens of Lehigh County, and thank you for attending this webinar this evening. I want to thank our County Executive, Phil Armstrong, along with Laura Gramis, for making this possible. With me tonight is my Chief Deputy, Dave Faust, and I am your Sheriff, Joe Hanna. I've been your sheriff here in Lehigh County for a little over 5 years now. I'm in my second term. And tonight I'd like to talk a little bit about the Sheriff's Office and what our role is, what we do, and some of the goals and objectives that we've been able to achieve in the past 5 years here as I have been your sheriff. One of the things that I found when I was campaigning in my first term, for my first term as sheriff, was people asking me what the sheriff does. What is the role of the sheriff? Well, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the sheriff has limited law enforcement powers. And we, as a result, there are some specific priorities that we have. First and foremost is the safety and the protection of the common pleas judges in the county. Secondly, and this is part and parcel to that, is the security of the courthouses. We currently have 2 courthouses. We have the what we call the new courthouse and at 5th and Hamilton Street on the northeast corner, and on the northwest corner we have our original courthouse that was built when the county of Lehigh began way back when. So those are our responsibilities: the safety and the security aspects of those buildings, as well as the Lehigh County Government Center and also other county properties. One of the things that we do operationally is that we have transport of prisoners. Now that's not only from our Lehigh County jail to our courts here in the courthouses, but also from other penal institutions throughout the Commonwealth. And we have a number of different divisions here. We have a warrant division. So we are responsible for service of bench warrants. And to give you just a little explanation on that, when someone doesn't appear in court, the judge will issue what's known as a bench warrant from the bench from which they sit. And that's where the terminology originates from. That will come to our warrant division, and we have deputies that are out on the road every day, and they will attempt to serve that warrant and to take that person into custody, bring them before the judge. We also have a protection from abuse unit, which serves protection from abuse orders. And they also, in some cases, take people into custody. We also have a civil division, and our civil division is responsible for the service of civil process. That can include a variety of things, including civil lawsuits and alike. So that's basically some of the things that people think about what the sheriff's office does. Oh, you issue gun permits, and that is also a big part of our job here. Is we issue gun permits. We have had an increase since 2019 to 2020 of almost 95% in the issuance and renewal of gun permits. We don't do that arbitrarily. Background checks are conducted through what's called the Pennsylvania Instant Check System, that is a database that is overseen by the Pennsylvania State Police. It's very robust. I'm very confident that when somebody comes back from that check, that they are worthy of getting a permit. One of the things that, just on the heels of today, that I wanted to discuss, and I'm going to ask the chief, since he spearheaded this with his team. I wanted just a few hours ago, we had our final assessment for accreditation for our office to the Pennsylvania Law Enforcement Accreditation Commission. This is a very coveted achievement for any law enforcement agency. To give you an example, if we attain this, we will be the sixth sheriff's office in the Commonwealth out of the 67 counties to achieve this accomplishment. And to give you a little broader picture, there are almost 1,200 police departments in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. 126 have only achieved accreditation through PLEAC. So, Chief, can you give a little explanation? And I think what's important is the length of time that it has taken us to get to this pinnacle.
Sure, Sheriff, and good evening. The Sheriff had a goal to apply for and get approved for accreditation back in 2016 when he was elected. Pennsylvania accreditation falls under the jurisdiction of the Pennsylvania Police Chiefs Association here in the Commonwealth. An umbrella of that is the Law Enforcement Accreditation Commission, which is made up of 21 commissioners, law enforcement executives from throughout the state of Pennsylvania. They oversee the accreditation process. So we made application back in 2016 and agreed to work towards that end result. Here we are in 2021, and we had a final assessment this week in hopes of being approved by the commission at their commission meeting in July. A large part of participation in accreditation for the sheriff is agreeing to conform to standards of best practices in law enforcement that fall under the jurisdiction of the commission. There are 550 standards and substandards of which we are responsible to follow on a daily basis and in our practices and our day-to-day law enforcement activities. So it is robust. It is day-to-day work. It is a lot of paperwork and also computer work. We must be audited by the commission. We must file annual reports to the commission, and we must apply for reaccreditation every 3 years.
Thank you, Chief. As the Chief said, this was a monumental endeavor, which took a lot of hard work, and this couldn't have happened without him at the helm and his team, including Lieutenant Beckhold and also Carl Geschwin, our current accreditation manager, to get us to this point. So we will know for sure in July if we become accredited. Things look pretty good, but we're all very proud of this. Some of the other things that we have brought to this office, and you'll hear me say we, because even though I'm the sheriff, I can't do this by myself. I have a wonderful team of deputies and command staff that actually really make this thing happen. We introduced our first canine, explosive detection canine, in 2017. Some of you may have seen her. Her name is Nevi, and her handler is Rich Gardner. Rich has been a longtime dog handler and retired from the Whitehall Police Department. This is his 5th dog during his career. And Nevi has had a number of calls during her short tenure here to check on suspicious packages. One of the things people would ask is, well, why do you really need a explosives detection dog? With the number of people that traverse the courthouses and the government center, inevitably there are some things that become suspicious. And we always have to be cognizant that that suspicious package or that suspicious backpack may have some type of explosive in it. Rather than evacuate all of the buildings immediately, we have Nevi and her handler at the ready to do a quick check on it. And we've been very lucky, and she has had a number of calls. So her need is frequent, I would say. And we're very proud to have her and Rich as part of our team. One of the other things that I recognized is that we needed to generate some grant funding, and we needed to do it not specifically or be dependent on the county to do that for us. We've been able to bring in $407,000 in grants to offset cost for our office and for technology and other aspects of some of the advances that we've put into place. And we have a lieutenant that wears many hats, but one of them that he is very astute at is writing and acquiring grants. So as I said, there's been over $400,000 that we've been able to attain in the past 5 years in grant funding. What I've also found is that I think everyone, and this is a model that's been used in the auto industry, especially in the foreign auto industry for years, is to cross-train people, to make sure that everybody understands, to make the operation work smoother and to have a fluid continuity in your operation, that everybody needs to know everyone else's job for as best you can. So we've instituted cross-training throughout the offices. Deputies that work in courtrooms have an opportunity to work in warrants or in the civil division, so they can get a flavor for what that aspect of our responsibilities are. One of the other things is we've established a community outreach program where we go out to businesses, schools, and churches, and either I will do it myself or the chief will do it individually, or if we're both available to do it, we will go out and we will do it in tandem, and we will do these presentations. And there's a variety of presentations we can do. So I offer that up to any of you in the audience. If you have an organization or a group or a community group or a church group that you'd like us to come out and do a presentation for, we'd be more than happy to do so. One of the other, among the capital projects, we're in the midst right now of a very large security upgrade capital project, which includes not only the courthouse, both the courthouses, but the government center. And we're going to be expanding that outside of that scope to include also all of the magisterial district offices, as well as Cedarbrook. And speaking of the magisterial district offices, about 3 weeks ago, we have just expanded our role for security, and we are now putting uniformed armed deputies, rotating them through all of the 14 magisterial district offices to provide security for them. One of the, and I'm doing all the talking here, so I'm going to pass it over to you, Chief, in a minute. But some of our, we operate on 6 core values. One of the core values that is very important to me and to the chief is diversity. And I could say without equivocation that as it stands today, Lehigh County Sheriff's Office is more diverse than it has ever been in the history of this office. And I say that with a great deal of confidence. So we're very proud of the eclectic group that we've assembled. Everyone are just top-notch, well-trained, and we're very, very proud. Some of the accolades that we've gotten from the assessors today just reinforces what the chief and I have worked so hard for over these past several years. So, Chief, I'm going to pass it over to you. Did I miss anything?
No. One of the things that's really been exciting throughout the sheriff's term here is all the different projects that we've worked on. One of them of mention is a uniform change, whereby the sheriff put us in newer, more neat uniforms that would be identifiable to the public, and the uniformity across the board so that the public would notice us when they needed or would have to be in contact with a deputy sheriff. The sheriff is big on visibility, and the public embraces that. So we are in different uniforms than some may have been used to prior to that. And that was certainly a morale booster for all the deputies and the rank and file here as well. So there's been a number of projects that we've worked on that have just been exciting to be a part of.
Thank you, Chief. And I think what's important as it relates to something as simple, or many people would say as trivial as a change of uniform. When I took office here, and you know, I like input from everyone, from the deputies, from our clerical staff. I think that's the only way that you can maintain a healthy organization. And we continue to do that. We continue to ask them for their input. I had a number of goals and objectives. I had a laundry list that I wanted to achieve when I stepped into this office. And when I opened it up, one of the priorities for the deputies was, you got to get us into new uniforms. And although it took us about 3 years to get there, we needed to be fiscally responsible, encumber money. Some deputies went with just 1 or 2 uniforms that they had to wash every other day because we weren't replacing the old ones. And we were able to do that in a fiscally responsible way. And it certainly was a morale boost. And we got a lot of positive recognition from judges, from government officials. So they stood up and noticed, which told me that, that was truly the right thing to do. One of the other things that I didn't touch upon that I think is very important is that, technology is the key to working smarter rather than working harder. And we've instituted a number of technological upgrades in this office. One of them is the soft code system, which is going to revamp all of our civil process, which is going to assist and allow us to be more expedient in our processing, both for our clerical staff and also for our civil division. We've also partnered with District Attorney Jim Martin and his office, and also with all of the Lehigh County police departments to enter into a record management system, which is called Mark 43. It's a state-of-the-art system, and we are now going to be a part of that. So we'll be able to exchange information that we gather on the street with all of the local police departments and with the district attorney's office. This has been a huge endeavor that has been driven by District Attorney Martin. We certainly thank him for that, not only from our office, but I know from a law enforcement perspective across the county. And pretty much, I think we've touched upon, at least briefly, everything or most of what we do here. And I'd like to open it up for any questions from the audience right now.
Thank you, Joe. So to ask a question, like I said, if you're joining us by computer or by mobile app, please press the raise your hand button. Or if you're joining us by telephone, please press *9. I will now open the floor to questions, and I'll look for the raise your hand button or the *9 prompt. And again, we are opening the floor to questions. If you have a question, please press raise your hand. If not, if you're joining us by telephone, please press *9. Again, now is a moment in the webinar where you may ask a question from the audience. Please press raise your hand if you're joining us by computer or *9 by telephone. Okay, I don't see any questions from the audience, but Joe, I have a question if you don't mind answering.
Sure.
As public information officer, I do receive the occasional phone call asking about the sheriff's sale. So maybe if you want to go into detail about what that's about, the next one is occurring, I'm sure there'll be some great interest in that.
Sure, thank you, Laura. The sheriff's sales, many people, it's somewhat of a misnomer. People think that I am the overseer of all of these properties that go to sheriff's sale, and that I control all of these properties. The reality of it is that these properties are posted and controlled by the creditors, and they then are representatives of the creditors, and then they are purchased by those people that attend the sheriff's sales. So I am, for lack of a better description, the auctioneer of other people's property. We have not had a sheriff's sale since October. They have been postponed because of COVID. And we have been following the emergency judicial orders set forth by the president judge, which has included our postponements. We're hoping to get back to the sheriff's sales. They are the last Friday, correct?
Yes.
Yes, last Friday of every month. We run them 12 months a year. One of the important things that you should know about the sheriff's sale is that that also is a revenue generator for the county. For each property that's sold, we get anywhere between 1 to 1.5% that from the sale price that then goes directly into the general fund for the county. So that helps to offset the cost of the county. We were holding them at downstairs in the first floor of the Lehigh County Courthouse for many, many years. We found within the past year or so that there has been such a reception for the sheriff's sales that we had to expand to a larger venue. So I've contracted with Cedar Crest College. They have been good partners with us, and we have been holding them in their alumni hall auditorium, which holds about 260 or 270 people. We were able to actually hold them at the beginnings of COVID and still practice social distancing. We hope to get back to that very soon.
Thank you. That was very informative.
One addition for there were no questions on it. However, the sheriff does offer for those who are on social media. We are on Facebook under Lehigh County Sheriff's Office. You can search that. The sheriff puts periodic notices on Facebook. So if you're on social media, certainly search us, and we do put periodic updates on our social media as well.
And Laura, I see you have our county web up now. Generally, what we make sure that we mirror any information on our Facebook is equally on the our web section of Lehigh County government. I think that's pretty much all that we have. One of the things that I wanted to, unless we have any other questions, but one of the things that I wanted to say in conclusion is, we welcome the citizens of Lehigh County to give us a call if you have any issues, any concerns. Myself, along with our staff here, we always make ourselves available. If you have a question that we can't answer, we will definitely get an answer for you. I think it's very important that if someone calls any type of government, whether it be local, county, state, or federal, that you don't get a runaround. Your time is valuable, and we understand that. So please don't hesitate to call us with any questions. I also want to extend an invitation to everybody that if you'd like to come in and see our operations, please give us a call. We'll schedule an appointment for you to come in, and we'll show you firsthand what we do here.
Thank you. And I also like to remind everyone that the Sheriff's Facebook page is connected to the County of Lehigh Facebook page. So if you can't seem to find it, just go to Facebook/County of Lehigh, and then you will see it attached there on the side. So there's always a link there. And if you can't find a link whatsoever, you can always contact me, Laura Gramis at lehighcounty.org. I handle the main Lehigh County social media. Okay, I'm going to open the floor once more to any final questions or comments for the Sheriff's Office. As I mentioned previously, raise your hand if you're joining us by computer, or *9 by telephone to ask a question. And I'm just going to give it a brief moment just to see if we have any inquiries from the audience. I am not seeing any. This is the last call for any questions or comments for the Sheriff's Office. Again, raise your hand if you have a question, or *9 if you're joining us by telephone. Okay, I'm not seeing anything from the audience, so I'm going to pass the floor back to you, Joe. Any final remarks or comments you would like to give out before you guys sign off?
No, I would just like to thank all the citizens of Lehigh County. It's been, a tough year for all of us. What I found in communicating with everybody, that there's been a high degree of tolerance by the people of Lehigh County. And as a lifelong resident of Lehigh County, I'm very proud to be a resident and also to be a public servant here.
Thank you, and thank you guys for joining us, taking time out of your busy evenings to go over this educational webinar. We all learned something tonight. Again, I would like to remind everyone that a recording of this entire webinar, including the Sheriff's portion, will be available on our county media outlets, YouTube, Facebook, and website. If you missed anything, always feel free to go back to that recording. And like Joe said, you can always reach out with questions or concerns. You gentlemen are free to leave the webinar. I know you guys said you had something else going on for the evening. So if there's anything else that I can do for you, just let me know.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura.
Have a great evening.
You also.
too.
Now I'm going to pass the floor over to Eric Minnich. He is our coroner for Lehigh County. Eric, the floor is yours. You may unmute yourself to speak.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for Laura for inviting us, and County Executive Armstrong for setting this up. Following the sheriff's a real tough act to follow, but I'm going to try and do my best to tell you a little bit about what the coroner's office does. We have a PowerPoint that Laura's going to bring up for me, so we can share that, Laura.
Yeah, let me get that up there for you.
So we can scroll on to the first page. So my name's Eric Minnich. I'm the Lehigh County Coroner. I was elected I was appointed actually back in 2019 upon the retirement of our previous coroner, Scott Grimm. I'd worked at the office for about 12 years at that time. So I've been there now total about 15 years. First deputy coroner starting in 2012. And my prior experience before coming to the coroner's office was in emergency services. I was a paramedic. So I have about 30 years of experience as a paramedic, city of Allentown, and up here in the northern part of the county where I'm from, and also as a volunteer firefighter. The next slide, Laura. So in addition to myself, our staff consists of 14 full-time employees, some of them supervisory, some administrative, some work solely in our morgue, and some work in investigations. We have 7 part-time employees. Those are split between our investigations and our morgue. All our investigative staff is state certified. And additionally, over 75%, and I'd have to check that number because we have just had 2 more certified, so we might be even higher than that, are in the process of getting a national certification, or have a national certification, which is kind of considered the best standard in our field. Next slide. So when you think about the coroner's office, you think about, people don't think too much about it. The first coroner we have here is, Jack Klugman, who was Quincy. He was the first TV coroner, much different than how we do things now. And then you think of CSI, that's what really got people interested in forensics and that kind of stuff and made it a little more, appealing to people. But reality, the first coroner in entertainment was the coroner from The Wizard of Oz, if you see down there at the very bottom. So, the coroner's been around for a long time, but a lot of people don't know what, really what it is we do. Go ahead. And this picture really speaks volumes to me because this is from, you recall, back in 2018, there was a car explosion in Allentown that took the lives of 3 people. This is our staff working that scene. We were there for absolutely days. These are dedicated people who, came in, worked extra, spent hours and hours at the scene, then back at our facility going through things, making sure that all the remains were accounted for. So, maybe it's not quite like what you see in Quincy. It's not like what you see on CSI, but this is the honest to goodness hard work that our staff does every single day. So we're very proud of this photo, and it's a great one. We actually have it hanging up in our lobby because it just shows how dedicated our staff can be. Okay, good, Laura. So we're going to talk about the 6 basic functions of what the coroner's office does. So obviously our biggest thing is determining the cause and the manner of death. The other important thing is identifying the decedent, making sure we know who the person is. That could be super easy sometimes if they're in their house, but sometimes it can be more complex and we have to use other scientific ways to do that. Equally as important, we notify the legal next of kin of the death. We prepare a report about the investigation. We account for and safeguard property of the decedent. And I think the most important thing we do is we provide assistance to families. When someone passes away, that's truly a difficult time, and it can be a huge struggle, a lot of burdens, so we can be there, whether it be the next day, the next week, the next year. If they have questions, we can be there for them and help, bring some closure and answers, to their loved one's loss. So our authority comes from state statute. The statute says that we shall have view of the body and investigate a death that occurs in the county, regardless of where the cause occurred. And that's kind of an interesting thing for Lehigh County. We are super fortunate to have 2 tremendous healthcare facilities in our county, St. Luke's and Lehigh Valley. And as we know, they've expanded their foothold throughout, northeastern PA. So if somebody's perhaps in a car accident in Monroe County and they are flown down here to Lehigh Valley Cedar Crest, because that's where the trauma center is, and they pass away, it's our responsibility to investigate that death, even though the cause occurred somewhere else. So, we do interact with agencies throughout the eastern part of the state and with the regional burn center here at Lehigh Valley, sometimes from New York, New Jersey, and Maryland as well. The law also indicates that we determine the need for an autopsy, and it explains the type of deaths we investigate: sudden, unexplained, violent, traumatic, drug-related, in custody, public health concerns, child deaths. If you can just scoot down a little bit there, Laura. And any deaths to be cremated. So if a body's going to be cremated, we have to give approval before that can occur. So that's a way for us to make sure that, nothing inappropriate happened or the death certificate's completed correctly. Okay, go ahead. So a little about our numbers. 2020 was by far our busiest year ever. Unfortunately, every year appears to be our busiest year ever, but this year we actually had from 2019 to 2020, we had a 20.5% increase, which is really unheard of. Generally it's a couple percentage points, but we had a huge increase. I assume COVID played a pretty big role in that. We responded to 1,159 scene or hospital cases. That would be a case where perhaps someone died at home and they were not under medical care, or maybe a car accident, homicide, anything that's not from natural causes that might be in the hospital or out of the hospital. We received over 4,200 referrals from hospitals, hospice, and nursing homes. And like I said before, we authorized cremations. So we authorized 3,506 cremations. In all my years I've worked there, we've never had that many cremations. And that definitely was a big part of COVID because people couldn't get together for funerals and that sort of thing. So a lot more people went the cremation route so they could do their services later on. We performed 326 autopsies of interest. 15% of all of our scene or hospital cases were drug related. And this number thankfully keeps going down. 5% of our scene and hospital cases are suicides. Go to the next one. So we'll talk a little bit about how COVID impacted us. Something we did from the very beginning was give a little update to Laura that she would put out on social media kind of talking about how COVID is impacting our community with the number of deaths in the municipalities they were occurring in, and just some other stats. All total, as of today, when I left work, or when I emailed this to Laura, there was 1,165 total COVID deaths reported to our office since the beginning of end of last March. Of our records that we have, 750 county residents died from COVID-19. And 61% of those county residents lived, unfortunately, in a long-term care facility. We know how hard this impacted our long-term care facilities. So you can see the kind of the chart there. We had a real high peak in April and May last year, but actually we had it even worse after the holidays, after Thanksgiving, Christmas, and around New Year's. Those numbers were, almost doubled, what we saw earlier last year. So it had a tremendous impact on, the number of investigations we conducted, number of referrals we had. It certainly increased the workload to our office, but, thankfully through all of this, whether it be a, COVID death that we had to investigate at a hospital or at someone's home, our staff stayed completely healthy because we had great support from our emergency management, from our state emergency management, county emergency management, and even dedicated community volunteers who, in the very beginning when we couldn't find masks, made masks and gave us masks. So we were very fortunate that, our staff remained healthy throughout the entire pandemic. We had no exposures or no, illnesses in our office. And, our team was able to keep moving through all this because, certainly they were terribly essential for our county during this, our pandemic. So just some 5-year trend stuff. As you see, our investigations in the top left corner, they just keep going up every single year, usually a smaller increase, but this year, certainly a larger one. Suicides, one of the things we're real involved with and why we have suicides and drug-related deaths up, we view ourselves as not just a responsive agency that we just come out when someone dies. We view ourselves as a bigger part of the public health team. That, it's not enough to just respond to these things that happen. How can we prevent unnecessary deaths? So that's why it's important, we're involved with, suicide prevention groups, opioid and drug-related death groups, child death investigation groups. So we can work with these other public health agencies and try and get this information out there to prevent this. As you can see with the suicide chart, we were up to 87 in 2016. We actually were down to only 52 suicides in 2019. Now the number ticked up a little bit last year, and I strongly believe that COVID played some role in that, with people not being able to be together and not getting to see people, and I think that certainly could have played a role in that. Our drug deaths just kind of keep bopping along in that same 160 to 180 range, but we have a great group that we're working with the Allentown Health Bureau, to try and work on getting this opioid prevention message out, because we think it's just so important. Any work we can do with other, community agencies, county offices to help, stem these unnecessary deaths, that's what we're all about. Next slide. And here, talking a little bit about that, like the sheriff was saying, we do a lot of outreach, much less, during the pandemic, obviously, but we do SAD demonstrations at local skills. We're on the child death review and prevention committees, drug death prevention groups. We additionally have an internship program. So if there's, people going to college for this type of thing, when I started, there wasn't really forensics programs, but programs like TV shows like CSI really brought forensics to the front of people's career interests. So now we have people going to school for forensic science or something along those lines. We have an internship program for students in college, whether it be for their undergrad or their graduate degree, to come intern at our office. That's temporarily suspended because of COVID, but hopefully maybe come the fall, we can get that thing going again and get some people in. We've had some wonderful, young people come through, some who have actually started working at the office, after that. So it's a great opportunity. And we also participate in preparedness drills with our emergency management and other public safety partners. So I'm just going to give you a little tour of the Forensic Center since obviously we can't be there. So we're going to take a look. We moved to this facility. And we go to the next slide. I have all the dates there. So we had groundbreaking in 2013. The Forensic Center itself opened in October of 2014. So we have a shared facility with the Citroni Ambulance Corps, our office, the Lehigh County District Attorney's Office Ballistics Lab, and the Lehigh County Special Operations Team. You know, at the time, this was one of the first public-private partnership facilities like this in the state. So it was a really great opportunity. You know, the county used the land, leased it to Citroni. Citroni built the facility, leases part back to us. So we have this, you know, wonderful facility, and we're in with, you know, other agencies who are, you know, we work with greatly. So like I said, it's a state-of-the-art facility with the capability to store over 40 decedents. And actually that was something we increased during the pandemic. Unfortunately, just due to the sheer number of deaths that were occurring in Lehigh County, we had to add additional storage space to the facility with additional racks because even some of the hospitals were just running out of room. And so we're up to about 60 that we can store now. We have the ability to perform 3 simultaneous autopsies. We have secure storage of evidence and personal effects. We have the ability to perform dental and full body digital x-rays on site. And we also have the ability to view decedents to families as a means of identification. They can come in, we have a certain room for that, they can see them while still maintaining the integrity of our investigation. Go ahead. So we'll take you through a little walking tour. This is our lobby when you come into the facility. We're out in 4350 Broadway in Citronia. We're at the corner of Parkway or Broadway and Parkway. This is our general office area where our staff works and does their reports and their investigations. To give you a little history, we were in the old courthouse prior to moving this facility. There was, I think at one point, 6 part-timers had to share one desk. So now we have a space where people have their individual workspace and can, you know, work, talk to families, communicate without, you know, having all the hustle and bustle around them. Go ahead. We have a law enforcement observation room that looks into one of our autopsy suites. So if there's a case where perhaps the person's decontaminated or there's a reason they can't be in, law enforcement can't be in the room while the autopsy is being done, they can observe from a separate room, but still interact with the doctor through a microphone system. The other picture here is we also have a family viewing room, and we have some, you know, comfortable furniture in there. So if a family wants to come in to view, needs to view a body to identify them, there's another room on the other side of the morgue that we can bring the body into. We can raise the curtain and they can view the body that way. There's also some sofas so we can sit and talk to families and interact with them in a little more pleasant, not so sterile environment. Going back into our morgue, we have an intake area where the bodies come in, deputies can take DNA evidence, fingerprints, we can complete our digital x-rays, and we have those evidence lockers. So any medications that we would find on or about the decedent, if we think they may have something to do with their death, we can bring those back, count them, inventory them, enter into a digital evidence software program, put them in those lockers, lock them, and only the evidence person can get them out on the other side. So once they're in there secure, nobody can get to them. The same with people's property, personal effects, that sort of thing. Okay. This is a picture of the main cooler, actually right when we moved in. So trays were still wrapped in plastic. But like I said, we can store upwards of 60 bodies now in our facility if need be. So this is looking into our main autopsy suite. There's 2 autopsy tables. There's one of the autopsy stations. They're set up basically identically. It's not a sterile, but a clean environment because of the type of procedures and the tools that are used there. We work with doctors who are based out of Lehigh County Hospital that come to our facility and perform our autopsies. They've been around for a long time. They're the only accredited forensic pathology group in the area. So that's certainly why we choose to work with them. And the last one It's this is a picture of our isolation autopsy room. So if you look at the lower picture, that curtain that goes up would look back into the law enforcement observation room. So any decomposed bodies, anything that needs to be decontaminated, anything unique would get done in that room specifically, as it's isolated from the rest of the, the autopsy and morgue area. Those are the pictures I have, and that's a bit of the presentation I have. I'd be certainly happy to take any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, we are going to open the floor to any questions or comments. If you're joining us by computer, please press raise your hand. If you're joining us by telephone, please press *9. And again, I would like to remind the audience that in order to speak, you must request to speak prior so the moderator can unmute your mic. You can do so by raising your hand or pressing *9. And another call for questions. If you would like to ask a question by computer, please press raise your hand. And if not, you're joining us by telephone, please press *9. Okay, I'm not seeing.
Curious about any of the updates that we put out during COVID or statistics about our office. Those are all on the county website under departments. Click on Coroner, and all the information is there for you if you're ever interested. And certainly, if you have any questions, my email address is on the website as well as our office phone number. Feel free to give us a call anytime.
Yep. And I also like to remind the audience that this webinar will be recorded and will be available for past viewings. So if you are afraid that you missed something that Eric has gone over tonight, you can definitely look back on this webinar for future references. Eric, do you have any final remarks or questions? It looks like we are wrapping up your portion before we sign off and move on to Mark.
I don't. I thank everyone for coming out and either watching this live or viewing it afterwards. I think it's great that you're taking interest in, what the different officers do at Lehigh County. I think it's, I'm very happy to come speak, to you all because, unfortunately the interaction with the coroner's office is never under a pleasant circumstance. But I, like to assure people that, we are there. My office, my staff is there to help you and work you through any of these issues that you may have when someone in your family would pass away and we're involved.
Thank you, Eric. We really appreciate you coming out tonight.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for having me.
Have a good one.
You too.
So now we're going to move the floor over to our controller, Mark Pinsley. Mark, thank you for joining us this evening. So what we would like to do, as always, is pass over the mic to you. You have the floor to speak. I have your presentation up. Just let me know when you need me to pull that up for you, and I can go through the slides. Whenever you want to have a period to prompt and ask questions or open the floor, we can certainly do so.
Great, thanks, Laura. If you can share my slides, that would be perfect.
Okay, let me just pull this up.
Okay, you can go right to the next slide. So my name is Mark Pinsley. I'm a controller of Lehigh County. I was elected, I guess, in 2019. So 2020 was the beginning of the Pinsley era, I suppose. Basically, most people have no idea what the controller is, and there are no shows about it. There's no CSI. There's no, something really cool. The controller is really about money. And so hopefully someday they'll make a show about it, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime too soon. In any case, a lot of the things that we end up doing are looking at how the money comes into the county or how the money leaves the county. So some of the things that we look at is we will look at the coroner's office or the sheriffs, the district attorneys. But we are also a row office, just like they are. So, you have your legislative branch, and then you have row offices that provide support and other oversight. And so we're one of those oversights, but we also look at the other row offices to see what they're doing. But one of the things that you can think about when you're thinking about the controller's office is it's kind of an auditor, right? It's really the fiscal watchdog responsible for making sure that all the taxpayers' dollars are spent properly. and that we really shine a light on different areas to make sure that people are doing the right thing. On a regular basis, what we'll do is we'll go over things like payroll or vendor payments. So every 2 weeks, we're reviewing payroll, and obviously on a regular basis, we're reviewing vendor payments to make sure that everything's in line. It could be, for example, just looking at things like whether or not somebody has gotten the correct overtime, or whether they have had access to healthcare, or whether the right number of family members have access to healthcare, things like that. We look at those types of things on a regular basis. If you can scroll up, Laura. So, I was a South Whitehall Township Commissioner before I became Controller. So it gave me a little bit of legislative background, so I understand how the legislation works. I was an MBA that came out of Kelley School of Business. Prior to that, I went to Northeastern University for my undergraduate degree. I'm a veteran of the United States Army and a small business owner called Dermamed, which is a skincare company. But really, probably one of the big things is, I was an executive at several large companies, and what it allows you to do is understand numbers, right? And one of the things is that numbers tell the story. It's something that many people don't want to spend time looking at, which I totally get. However, numbers can tell the story of what's going on in any company or in any government if you take the time to really dig in and see what's going on. Yeah, Laura, if you can scroll up. So as I was mentioning earlier, some of the stuff that we do, bi-weekly payroll and monthly pension payments are a huge undertaking for us. In fact, at the end of the year, if we calculate all the time that we spend, this is going to be the largest percentage of where our time goes. We do audit hotel tax revenue as well. So one of the things that comes in from the outside is hotel tax revenue. So we get the county gets a small piece of hotel tax revenue, and we verify that the hotels are in fact paying that. We also perform desk audits, or what we call a desk audit, which ends up being a part of an audit that's completed at the end of the year. But we look at all of the magisterial district judge offices to see if there's any red flags. So a lot of these offices do collect money directly from people. So we'll actually go and take a look at their cash drawers and things of that nature to make sure that there's nothing going on. And there, we haven't found anything of significance going on in those areas. Always some errors may occur, but nothing to be worried about. If you can scroll on. So I wanted to highlight some of the audits that we had done this year. So one of the things that we did this year was take a look at the Highmark prescription audit. So in Lehigh County, we spend about $30 million on healthcare in general. About $7 million of that is specifically on our pharmacy spend. And we are self-insured. So what that means is when one of our employees goes to the doctor or goes to the pharmacist in particular, and they have their copay. So let's say you buy a $30 drug and there's a $5 copay. Lehigh County pays that additional $25. So the employee would pay the $5, we would pay the $25. And the way we do that is we do it through Highmark. So Highmark becomes an administrator for us, not necessarily what you would think of as an insurance company. So they're a middleman between us and the pharmacy. And one of the things that we found this year was that based on a variety of things, including rebates and other issues, there was about $1.4 million in savings that we could have achieved that we didn't achieve. So we brought that to light, and I know that the commissioners have been working on making some changes so that we can make sure that the taxpayers' money is being used as we expect it to be. If you could move a little bit forward there, Laura. We did a constable audit. So, constables, one of the responsibilities is for making sure that defendants are served warrants. Some who may not have shown up for trial, or it may be just as somebody who's gotten a lot of tickets on their car and eventually a warrant is put out for their arrest. A constable would be somebody that would actually make that happen. The first step is they actually just send out a letter saying, hey, there's a warrant out for your arrest. Please pay this bill. And a large number of people will do that. As soon as they get that from a constable, they'll start paying their bill. So what we looked at was saying, can the sheriff do that rather than a constable? And what we did find is that if the sheriff took that component over, there could be about a $270,000 savings to the county. Now, we haven't implemented that yet, and there's a lot of other reasons, why we haven't looked at that hasn't been implemented yet. But it is something that we're talking to the sheriff's office about, and seeing whether or not this is something that they could start doing in order to achieve those kind of savings. But this is the kind of thing that we'll look at, just something that's ordinary that's going on, that maybe people hadn't thought about something new, and we investigate it to make sure that and bring it to light so that people can see that there are these other savings available. And if you can move on, Laura. Another audit we did was Cedarbrook. So Cedarbrook has gone through a variety of management, some of which has been outsourced by the county over time. So this investigation actually was much more historical than it is today. However, what we ended up finding was about $450,000 of monies that had not been charged. So there are different types of people in Cedarbrook. So some are paying through insurance or through Medicaid, and some are paying privately. And so it turned out that there were some of those private pays that had not completed paying prior to their death. And so we failed to collect about $450,000. And Laura, if you can move on. Then non-audit services. So this is something that I really brought into our office, which is we will look at something that isn't necessarily a complete audit. So, in an audit, there's a very specific, strict process. We actually follow a rules book that we go through to make sure that we do an audit completely. But there are some times where you can actually do you can provide information based on data that's available that doesn't completely follow an audit. And that's what we've done. And so we've done this to help with key policy issues. A lot of them were modeled after Auditor General Eugene DePasquale. He is somebody that I had followed and really saw what he was doing. I really liked what he was doing. Really, to me, once again, all it's about is bringing light to areas that people might not normally see, and they might not normally be interested in until you start to dig in and you start to see some of these areas where we can really have an impact and save money for the county. And in some cases, we might even make recommendations where we're, suggesting that we spend more money in the short term, in the belief that there will be savings in the long term. And once again, a lot of that comes out of some of what Eugene had done. If you can keep going forward, Laura. So one of the non-audit service highlights was a single-use plastic audit that we did. So, we looked around not only in Lehigh County, but others, and looked at the amount of money that is being spent in things like the clogging of our sewers, and how it destroys our green space. We actually have a number of commissioners, in particular Commissioner Percy Doherty, that was ready to implement this kind of strategy. And one of the things that had happened was that the state came in and preempted the ability for us to actually issue an ordinance around single-use plastic. And the ordinance is not specifically a ban. Really what it would do is say that our expectation would be that businesses would charge for plastic. So there are different, people are doing this all around our state already, or within our state already, and also in other states. I believe New York is doing it. I think Vermont's doing it, California. And basically what they're doing is they've requested that businesses start charging for those plastic bags. And so if you have a plastic bag charge, either for a nickel or 15 cents, it has reduced the amount of plastic in those areas. And because one of the things that we found is that even though those bags can be reused, in often cases they're not. They don't even go into recycling. People just throw them away. And so it's just clogging up our systems. So really we're gonna have to do something about single-use plastic bags over the course of the next year or two, not just Lehigh County, but really all of the United States. If you could keep moving forward there, Laura. Prison phone costs was something that I did when I first entered here. So one of the things that I had found was, for example, if a prisoner wants to make a phone call, they're charged a specific amount of money. And for every dollar that they're charged, Lehigh County gets about 70 cents in commission. So for every dollar a prisoner pays for a phone call, Lehigh County gets about 70 cents of that as a commission. And so that ends up being somewhere between $750,000 a year in commissions that inmates are paying to use the phones. Now, I know there's two sides to this. Some people think that, if somebody did the crime, they should do the time and pay the fine and pay other fees as well. The issue for me in this particular case is it's not the prisoner who's actually paying, it's their loved ones or someone on the outside that really had nothing to do with the crime, is just trying to have contact with their loved one. And there's a lot of science behind, connecting with a loved one in a prison and the likelihood of recidivism. So the more connection a loved one and a prisoner have, the more likely they are to not recidivate. And one of our major goals should be to reduce recidivism and in fact, reduce overall the number of people that we have in prison. And so this isn't just prison phone calls. This is the commissary and other things where the county makes a commission off of, basically we're taxing those people extra who have family members in prison. If you could continue, Laura. Cash bail, this is another big area that we've worked on. I put out a large discovery on this. Really, the goal was to see how cash bail is being used, how many people are stuck in jail because of cash bail. It ended up being a fairly large number of people stuck in jail for cash bail, meaning they have not yet been convicted of their crime, but they couldn't afford to get out of jail simply because they don't have the money. So that ends up being, from my perspective, that ends up being a major issue. One of the reasons is now we have people in jail that we're paying for, and we're feeding, and that we're taking care of, and yet they're not even necessarily guilty. And in many cases, even if they are guilty, they would never have done time. So this is the kind of, and the report ended up showing like which judges are charging the most bail, which judges are charging the least bail, how long people are being held, things of that nature, and how long people are being held based on the type of crime. So was it a summary offense or a felony or a misdemeanor? Where was it in the scheme of all of that? And so, these are the kind of things that help to inform the commissioners and the public. Ultimately, it's their decision as to what to do with that information. Our goal is just to bring it to light and allow those types of decisions to be made. Laura, if you could move on. So in conclusion, under my leadership, I really work to bring innovation into the office, to highlight some of the injustices or inefficiencies that we have. I'm really interested in taking a look at where we spend our money the most. We spend about 69 cents of every tax dollar on law and order, which means that obviously that's where my focus is going to be, to make sure that that money is spent properly. And so it doesn't always have to be an audit. As I mentioned earlier, I think that it could be a non-audit service, which is basically an in-depth report about something that's going on. I've been nonpartisan and independent. I've done everything that I can to just bring more things to light so that both the commissioners and the people have a better understanding of what's going on in Lehigh County. And I am willing to take any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Mark. So now we'll open up the floor for any questions. As previously stated, or if you're just joining in, if you have a question and you're on computer, please press raise your hand. And if you are joining us by telephone, please press *9. I'll give it a moment to see if anyone would like to raise their hand. And again, as I mentioned previously, if you're joining us by computer, please press the raise your hand button. You'll find it on the bottom of your screen. Or if you're joining us by telephone, please press *9. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions from the audience, Mark. So I think you have one more slide on here.
I think it was just, yeah, the links that, I gave. There was nothing of consequence. Certainly, if people want to know more, they can email Josh Siegel at lehighcounty.org. I am always available. You're welcome to call or email me as well. These are just some of the, and our main website, things like that.
Thanks. And as I've mentioned previously too as well, this will be recorded, so you can always look back on this recording in the future. If you feel like you forgot something, you might have missed something Mark has said tonight, you can definitely have this footage for future use. Mark, do you have any final comments or questions before we sign off for the night?
No, I don't. Like, anybody's willing to call me anytime. I'm always excited to talk to people that are interested in government. And Laura, I really appreciate you putting this together.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank you for joining us this evening, taking time out of your busy schedule. I also like to thank everyone who has joined us this evening. I know we had a few people come and go. I'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight. Next week will be our final Citizens Academy presentation with District Attorney Jim Martin. So please stay tuned for that link, which will be up on the website starting next week. Again, my name is Laura Gramis. I am the Public Information Officer for Lehigh County. Thank you for joining us and have a great night, everyone.